Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by CoolStuffInc.com, CardHoarder.com, Alter Sleeves, as well as Twitch subscribers and Patreon supporters just like you. I'm Evan Earl, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, MTG Nerd Girl.
Hey guys, welcome back.
Live on location.
That's right.
Ruben Bressler.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to perch and have my knee in the shot.
I am not going to perch because I hurt my knee
Good luck with that, Ruben.
I'm not as, this is very uncomfortable. Okay.
If you want to hear all about my knee trouble, you can check out the pre-show. Subscribers to this channel get access to our NSFW version early. And we kick it off with our first pick in our giveaway. Get your chance at $50 worth of anything at CoolStuffInc.com by typing !raffle in the chat. But subscribe first to get 2 chances to win and support your favorite streamer with your suggestions at the end of the show to see who we raid tonight. That is, of course, thanks to our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day. And what we have here for our first pick this week was a surprise announcement. Now, Lord knows Wizards has done it every which way but loose. There is the announcement of the announcement. There's the announcement that it's coming soon. There's the announcement that they're thinking about it. There's the announcement that it might be coming. And then there is you just refreshed one day and Luris of the Dream Den got banned in Pioneer, Modern. Why not Historic? Anybody? Why not Historic?
I don't know.
Then they'd have to give wildcard refunds.
Right. And I'm like, is that really wild? Because I don't like to be too cynical about it, but look, people did note that when they ban stuff in Pioneer and Modern, Wizards loses absolutely nothing. They have to do no more work. There's no refunding of anything. It's just your cards are generally worth less, more or less. But Lures of the Dream Den was banned in Pioneer and Modern. This was a change that was seen as very positive from what I can tell from the community. And just another example that companions were a mistake.
Yeah.
Putting it lightly. And they were a mistake even after they cost 3 more mana.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how that one got out of playtesting. I'm usually the very first person to back up R&D. Like, I don't think I could do a better job, but this one is pretty awkward.
Yeah. It's tough when you have something called the Storm Scale or the Dredge Scale, and then the companions are an 11, if not higher. Even the worst one is busted entirely in half. So they will all eventually get broken and banned. Someday they will print enough creatures where Umori is in an all creature deck, and it'll be like, the Umori deck is too good, we have to ban Umori. That it'll happen to every commander. They will come for every commander or every companion.
Yeah.
They will all get banned in every format.
I don't know why. And it's not like it took a long time for people to understand it. It's not like it took a long time for people to recognize it. Like, if you lived through the era of New Phyrexia with Mental Misstep, if you lived through the era of Survival of the Fittest through Legacy, those do not compare to the era of Ikoria and how it warped every single format around itself. It was amazing, like, not in a good way, but remarkable in a very bad way of, wow, everything is about the companions.
The only thing that is remotely close is Affinity. Where you either played the Affinity deck or you played the Molder Slug deck designed to beat Affinity.
And lost anyway.
And usually lost anyway. Draw. Yeah. Like, your deck was just 45 oxidizes and it was still not good. That's about it. I'm having trouble thinking of a format. I mean, there were block formats that were broken, right? When everyone was playing Rebels or everyone was playing Lingering Souls, but in general, we're talking about standard and older, and I've never seen anything in the modern era,
right,
as in since Modern became a format, where you either played companions or you played a bad deck. Like, there was no middle ground, and it was in every format.
I will say, for all the badness that companions bring to Constructed, I did kind of have fun with them in Limited, so
yeah.
I don't regret having some unique build-arounds, because there was the archetype build-arounds, and then there was also the companion build-arounds. So it kind of doubled the amount of different types of deck you could play in the format, and it made for some very unique gameplay. So I won't say, I'd like to say something good at least. So maybe that's where their head was at when they were designing them, but I don't know.
They were great, and they're great in the cube too. I think that they're the right power level for the cube.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're just completely out of control busted in any traditional Magic format.
Well, speaking of out of control busted, it is called the Storm Scale. In Pauper, Galvanic Relay was banned. That's the Storm card from Modern Horizons 2 that exiles the top card of your library. During your next turn, you may play that card. It has Storm. Disciple of the Vault is banned because Affinity is stupid and dumb and they just are tired of it. And Expedition Map is unbanned, which is interesting, which will help some of the Urzatron decks return to form.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, they banned Galvanic Relay, which was getting used not only in Storm decks, but also as just like a draw engine in like Tron decks, which was weird. It was just a card that was in mid-range decks. It was just, draw 7 a lot of the time for very little investment. You can read more about the Pauper bans in a connected announcement in the Wizards article. Yeah. Disciple, sure, I think that one has been legal for long enough that we can go back to playing Carapace Forgers and try to build the Affinity deck slightly differently. And to try to rebalance, they gave Tron back Expedition Map because they got rid of Bondur's Ornament and Prophetic Prism. So they want to let you have a little bit more leeway with the Tron lands, even if they're taking away the color sources. Makes sense. All these changes made sense.
Yeah, I just want to note that one of my favorite cards that's come out in honestly probably the past couple of years at this point is Experimental Synthesizer. This card is so sick. It's so much fun. I've played it in a ton of decks. It's great and limited. It's really good and constructed. It's sick in Pauper when you can pick it up with Glenhawk or Core Skyfisher. Like, that is awesome. It's red card draw, but it's not. It's random, but it's kind of not. And like, you can build your whole deck about knowing that when you play the Experimental Synthesizer, you can play what's on top of your deck, whether it's a land or some non-land card. And between that and the Ulti-Cult Anvil guy is just so sick, so much fun. I've been having a ton of fun with it. And it's remarkable how cool that 1-mana artifact is.
Yeah. Synthesizer in Pauper, giving Kuldotha Rebirth a little bit of a rebirth.
Yeah,
and then of course, the Mardu, Rakdos, Grixis mid-range sacrifice thing with Oni Cult Anvil. Also a really fun deck. It's a really cool card.
Yeah.
No, I had to look it up because I didn't know. I would be very interested in seeing some of your lists for this. Like I said, I had to look up the card because I was just like, what is he talking about?
Oh, I got plenty of lists. It's so much fun. I'm telling you.
Okay, I have not seen that in Constructed. I've definitely seen it a fair amount in Limited. And again, that's a pretty sweet card to have with drafts and sealed decks when you've got the Anvil deck. I was lucky enough to draft double Anvil, almost triple Anvil, but I passed on the first one.
Like, people are starting to run, was it Sokazon?
Sokinzon? Yeah.
Sokinzon. There you go. The goblin that you can sacrifice an artifact to make a 3/1 haste guy.
Yeah, Sokinzon Smelter is
that's
the one
right.
you're thinking of.
That's starting to see some play. And again, you sacrifice the Experimental Synthesizer guy and you're getting like card advantage on card advantage along with a 3/1 haste. And it's one of those like sort of strategies and ideas that started out as kind of silly. It's almost like a joke. You're like, well, you're going to play this little mana artifact and you're going to sack some artifacts and get a little advantage and stuff. But after a while, it starts to add up. And I've played it in Historic and I've played it in Standard, and I've won games that you don't have sort of, any right to win because these little advantages can just, roll people over. And I love it.
It is interesting that Historic Rakdos Sacrifice is now a Oni Cult Anvil deck, not necessarily a
Cat Oven or whatever.
Yeah, Cat Oven or Mayhem Devil deck.
Right. And Only Called Anvil, that thing is real. When you got multiples out, like I had 3 out, you sack 1 artifact, you get 3 1/1s. Like, so much value. It's just little tiny amounts of value.
And it's really hard to disrupt as well.
Mm-hmm. Which I love. And it's when an artifact leaves the battlefield. So no matter what you're doing, you're sacrificing it with the Deadly Dispute or whatever. Like, it's fantastic. But as we move out of the first pick into Gather the Townsfolk, thanks to our sponsor, cardhoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. Tell them we said hello and that we sent you, because we're going to talk first about the weekly MTG upcoming schedule that they talked about tonight on Weekly MTG, where next week, this is what they tell us, next week, MTG Arena Economy stream. Nerd Girl, take it away.
Oh boy. Well, we talked about it a little bit in the pre-show, and I just want to say, like, Evan was so cute. Mm-hmm. Like, normally you're kind of the skeptical, grouchy dude on the show when it comes to this kind of stuff. But no, you were just like starry-eyed and it's like, oh, maybe we get dusting, maybe we get wild card like exchange. And I'm just like, oh, Evan, so cute. I think they're going to go back to the double wild card.
Looking like surprise, double wild cards in historic, y'all. And we're never banning Luris. End of stream.
They're like, we thought about it. And actually, we do like it. You know, we gave you guys plenty of time to get your collection started, and we're gonna go ahead and do it. Or they'll announce like, maybe there's new cosmetics that will be introduced into the economy.
What do you actually think?
Cosmetics.
What do you actually think they will announce?
What do I actually think they will like? What do I think is actually like realistic? Realistic is they might change what the Mastery Pass provides to have it be providing what it did in earlier setups and situations. Like the Mastery Pass used to be more giving, and it became less giving over time. That's the thing that's quantifiable, and people have shown that. Or they might do things like have new events that are either cheaper or free that will provide you wild cards in ways you can get different, wild cards in new ways. Or they will provide things like weekly or monthly rewards that are better than the currently weekly or hell, there aren't even weekly rewards. So maybe they'll introduce weekly rewards on top of the monthly / your placement in the ladder rewards. That's about as much as I can hope for. Giant changes like dusting and transposing X into Y cards, I don't expect, because it's just too structural of a change.
I will say that one of my hopes is a very far-fetched one, and we haven't seen a ton of, we've seen no clues to this, but now that we've started to get these proxy draft formats, draft for free, don't keep the cards.
Right.
I'm hoping that might be a thing, as well as some way to utilize that sort of a system for a play queue for testing decks. I would love to see that, even if it's, not ranked, even separate from the play queue, whatever, for people to actually get in some reps with the thing, see if they like it before having to commit, a deck costs $300 now or something on Arena, some obnoxious number for like a solid mana base.
Depends on what
if you're starting from the ground up and don't have the lands. Yeah.
Crazy.
I mean, you got to get lucky, honestly, sometimes to get the mythics that you're looking for, depending on the set you're opening. It's funny, if what they honestly announced was, pay $25 a month and you can play with every card on Arena in any constructed format you want, I don't think again, as a whale guy, the guy who's buying this bunch of stuff, would even get it, because my collection at this point has had so much money pumped into it, it wouldn't do me any good.
Or if there was like a phantom drafting, like pay us X dollars and you get X phantom drafts a month.
Sure. I don't know.
Yeah. I would love them to have a Moto approach and let me reuse my packs as part of my entry fee. Yes. That would be cool.
That would be
especially because I don't open my packs, and I currently have about 1,000 unopened packs on my 2 accounts. That'd be sweet.
Just to give you like 2 options to enter, for example, here's the raw gems, or use your packs and your gems and click this button. And there's just a variety of ways that they don't have to move the needle a huge amount. We're not asking them to give up all their profit. It's just, can we just get a little something?
If that's too complicated, another thing they can do, instead of giving you the 2 buy-in prices, what they could do is be like, okay, here is your, you got 4 wins. Would you like the packs and gems current split, or would you like a small gem bonus in exchange for your packs? Sure. So that way you can continue to re-enter. And I think that would be also a very nice thing for the limited side of things, which is the best way to acquire cards, even if you're bad at limited.
And
I have no idea what to expect. Like the fact that they said we're making an Arena stream about the economy, I was like, there's no, I have no frame of reference as to what they're going to talk about. So
there's two outcomes I see: the tiniest crumb, and everybody will be over the moon, or everybody's going to be very, very unhappy.
Right.
I don't know which. I feel like I'm leaning towards the unhappy side, but I'm not gonna.
This is the wonderful Magic community that's always super positive, crazy upbeat, ready to see on the bright side of life. My guess is no matter what happens, there'll be some amount of disappointment, but hopefully what they do provide or do explain, maybe some changes are coming down the pike. That would also be nice to know. My literal kingdom to let me choose my default styles and my default lands. My
not
God,
in the economy stream.
Given kingdom, please, God, would you just I've played this damn program for years, and every friggin' time I build a deck, I have to go in and remove the lands and hand the lands back. I don't know how much time over the years I have literally wasted replacing lands and card styles, but it is absolutely maddening.
This is a Wendy's. We can't keep meeting like this.
I want a Frosty. Give me a Frosty. Right. Look, the next.
I do not understand. They would make. I know, letting us keep our set of specific altar doesn't technically make them more money on the front end, right?
No.
Like doing that, I could see why they're not doing it. But then you have players like me who refuse to buy anything, so I don't want to deal with it. It's like, oh, I like that, but I am not going to go in and change it in every single deck. So there's no point in buying it. I feel like they're actually losing out on more than they expect.
Yeah. The quality of life improvements are hard to quantify. They're hard to say you're going to make X dollars because you made Y dollars in changes. But like one that I'm struggling with, for example, is I got the really nice black and white kind of sketch versions of the Crimson Vow version of Thalia Garden of Thraben, right?
Yeah.
I own 3 of those. I own 4 of the other ones that came out. 3 of those. I can only use 3 of the cool sketch versions because I haven't crafted a 4th one, even though I now already have 7 Thalias in my account. Okay, whatever. March 24th is going to show up the Commander Legends 2 Baldur's Gate pre-beats. Now, pre-beat was, I would say it was an internal term. I haven't really heard this before.
Yeah.
I've definitely heard of Wizards giving presentations for upcoming sets and products that generally show a very small amount to distributors and or interested parties overseas and things like that. They appear to call them pre-beats. Well, either way, for example, the pre-beats we got for Streets of New Capenna was the Triomes. We got the Triomes. We got the houses. Here's the product makeup. There's going to be some sort of, here's the pre-release packs look like this. There's going to be box toppers in some form or fashion. Isn't that awesome? Distributors buy in. We'll see in a month. And that's more or less what's going to happen on March 24th with Commander Legends 2. So, Commander Legends 1 was insane.
By the way, now that we know that the full cycle of comes into play tapped, cycling 3 triple lands aren't all called Triomes, I propose that we go back to calling them tricycles. I don't want to call them Triomes. I think that Triome is a stupid word, and the word tricycle is a lot more fun.
I like tricycle.
But yeah, pre-beat's weird. The fact that this was that's the first time I've heard that word out loud. But
that's what they get to use. Well, Commander Legends 1 was like just over the moon successful. Like it sold, y'all. It sold and it kept selling. And it's just one of the best selling products ever that I've seen at Cool Stuff. Like it was amazing. So like we're primed for a fantastic product when it comes to Commander Legends 2. Like,
yeah, people love Baldur's Gate too. So
let's go.
Yeah. They're very incentivized to make Commander product very good.
And I'm hoping it will be. Now, March 31st, the Premier Play Systems with Huey Jensen. What has Huey Jensen been working on so far?
I mean, obviously this show is all about the insidest of inside baseball. Like, you're not watching Magic Mics if you just started playing Magic like a week ago. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I know that I should be more excited for the Baldur's Gate stuff. I probably should even be more excited for the Arena stuff. But as the incredibly invested, incredibly, old person who wants to see not only Magic competitive magic happen, but also see Huey specifically succeed, this is the one I'm excited for.
Yeah, I like the idea of an OP announcement, even if like nothing drastically changes. I've been very easy on the announcements or the lack of OP happening or, progress in that direction because of COVID.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people are like, why don't we have X, Y, and Z? And I'm just like, because of COVID. But I do think it will be nice. And I've been saying this for, I don't know, probably my entire time on the show at this point, that like just giving some hint of the direction that we're going to be taking, giving players some light at the end of the tunnel, I think will just kind of calm the storm a little bit and give those players something to be excited about, as opposed to just thinking that their game, their career, their friends, all of it's down the drain, right? Like I love traveling to a GP and seeing all my friends every other month because I don't get to see them. They're all over the country.
I mean, it's weird to me in many ways that Wizards continues to brag about Hall of Famers being a part of events when there hasn't been a Hall of Fame induction in many years. The Hall of Fame has practically been scrubbed at this point. There's no discussion as to how to bring it back. My hope is that this brings it back. My hope is, honestly, like it feels like somebody came in and said, let me reinvent the wheel. And it was not the wheel and it just exploded in their face. Like if we could just go back and say, you know what, the wheel we had was pretty good. I like PTQs. I like Grand Prix. I like Pro Tours. I like the names of those things. I like naming them after sets like we had for a long time was really fun. Or even going back to cities. I don't care. Retcon back the pro points like I talked about before. Like let's just go back. Like I don't expect us to get back to DCI numbers, but I do expect us to get back to pro points and PTQs and Pro Tours where maybe that's where we have our coverage and we just run it back to the way that we had it for years. And it was great.
Right. More like tennis where you sort of amass points over a season.
Yeah.
Maybe not a full reversal back to the pro point system, but something to aspire to. If you're trying to be an esport, you want to have some amount of competitive action happening. It has always been sort of, they've been talking out of both sides of their mouth of like, we want it to be an esport, but we also don't care about the competitive scene. Well, you got to pick one. Also, by the way, there's just a massive competitive event this weekend. Did anybody know that the Neon Dynasty Championship was happening this weekend?
I mean,
before I just said it
because of complaining later.
Yeah, exactly.
I did know. I heard. I mean, I had it mentioned. I mean, I'm sure I knew it from months ago or whatever, but then didn't care or follow along. And then a week ago, someone said it's this weekend, and I've been seeing a lot of noise on Twitter about people saying, "Oh, what decks did you want to take?" or what, things like that. But I don't really know anybody who has any interest in watching. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that OP is not accessible to the average person in any way. So.
Yeah, I mean, you're behind some weird veil at this point of how did you get here? Well, I followed this trail that way through the woods, and this other person went through the river, and we're like, I don't know how you got here. You just did things, and there's a beauty in simplicity, and there was a beauty in previous model knowing that X leads to Y leads to Z. And it's also funny how a lot of people just, felt like that system was like hated and that system was sort of despised and that system had problems. And I'm like, well, no system's perfect, but I certainly would note that whatever they changed it to is a hell of a lot less perfect than what we had. Either way, I am very excited to hear what that has to say. So the Streets of New Capenna that we spoke about, the cycling is only going to show up on the new Triomes, on the new Tricycles. The only cards in the set with cycling, and I am totally okay with this.
Yeah, it's fine.
The new Tricycles?
Yes.
Yeah. Which is great. I'm totally cool with that. That isn't, I'm happy. This is, I'm the guy who's like, why can't we just, use some of the old mechanics in the new sets, even if they're just on one or two cards, as long as there's reminder text, as long as it tells you what it does, I think it's fine. To see an example of how this is like horribly done wrong, the Versus System 2 PCG game, which was a reboot of Versus System, they have name mechanics, but they don't use reminder text. Honestly, I don't know, hardly any of the time, and it just drove me completely insane when I tried to play that game. And that's how you do it wrong. But if you have Consider, and it is Surveil 1, and you say what Surveil means, I'm okay with that. And I feel like they keep doing this weird thing where they're like, well, you know what? That's a lot of complexity. That's a lot of things to put. You know how many words you put on cards these days? You put 1 million words on cards. They can understand what Surveil does. I promise you.
They didn't put Surveil on Search for Azcanta. They didn't give us Metalcraft on Inventors Fair.
Right.
Like, just put the words on the cards and put them in reminders.
You're not going to hurt anybody's feelings. You're not going to do some complexity creep you're afraid of. This is another boogeyman.
The alternative is that they could have just said, pay 3 colorless mana, comma, and discard this card from your hand, colon, and then not called it cycling. But there are so many cards that interact with cycling that they couldn't do that. So, we're going to find a point where it's like, obviously there's 1 million cards with cycling and there's only so many cards with battalion or whatever. So, where's the middle point? I think that it's fine to have flavor text as rules text. We saw that with D&D also, with the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. They named abilities.
Nergirl, I saw an eye roll there on that one.
You don't like those?
Oh.
No, I like those. I don't know that I agree that we want to add a ton more of abilities in an individual set, just because that's very not, that makes the game not easily accessible to newer players or players just returning to the game, because we're constantly getting new mechanics in every single set, and we're going to pepper in 4 to 7 other old mechanics with more flavor text. We're already, the last 3 sets, we have complained about the amount of text on cards, and now you guys are wanting more text on cards.
And more.
But I want the text to be flavorful.
I like the text to be flavorful. I also like the idea, like this to me, and we're bouncing in the red zone because you're wrong and I hate you. Look, the point is.
Oh, you haven't done a red zone before.
Yeah.
Have you?
Go ahead.
Have you done a red zone before?
She's never done a red zone.
I have not.
Okay. So usually what happens is I tell Evan that he's wrong and I hate it.
Okay.
But that is not the case here. We're disagreeing with you. So
okay. Bring it.
Bango.
Yeah, we're allowed to. You
guys
to
are allowed to be wrong. That's
right.
Okay, and so are you. So my justification of this is that this is the same thinking we had 10 years ago. So the same thing we had 15 years ago. It was you can't repeat landfall. You can't repeat metalcraft because this will just put too many words into the space of the mind. And I agree with you. We have spoken about how many words are on cards, but at the same time, Kamigawa is one of the best damn sets they've made in years. It's super cool. It's super flavorful. I love the different alternate arts, and alternate arts are another good example of they ran away from alternate arts 15, 20 years ago, and they're like, that's bad. No one wants alternate arts, and now there's an entire business model built around it. So like these weird boogeymen, I just hate it when they're like, we can't do that because it would just mess everything up. And I'm like, I don't think it would, man. I don't think it would.
I can't imagine having someone get a starter deck from a particular set, like the Kamigawa starter deck or whatever, and having 50 evergreen mechanics on there, all with like their own paragraph of text explaining that particular mechanic that only happens on 1 or 2 cards, but like you still kind of need to know. It's going to make life so much more difficult for new players.
They don't have to on the box.
They don't have to be
just
evergreen.
Have to on the card.
I know, but like that, having that amount of cards with that amount of text makes a particular game very difficult to get through for someone who is new to it. That's the thing I like about having contained sets with a limited number of evergreen mechanics and 1 or 2 new things that you can kind of wrap your head around.
Well, I would note that I wouldn't call them evergreen. I would say that they are named mechanics, and they're named for a reason to help you kind of have a mental shortcut when you use them in the future. Now, the first time you read it,
is cycling evergreen?
Cycling, I believe, is evergreen or deciduous, whatever. Like it's very commonly used.
Yeah.
Ward, now we're getting 1 or 2 in every set as well. I would say that that's now evergreen.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let me ask you a question. There's a card named Sunblade Samurai. It costs 4 generic and a white, and it's an enchantment creature, human samurai, 4/4 with vigilance. I'm sure you've played it in limited. And it says channel of pay 2 mana and discard it. Search your library for a basic plains card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle. You gain 2 life. That's plain cycling. Right?
That's plain cycling.
That is a named ability that exists already and has been keyworded in multiple different sets, and you gain 2 life. This is given channel because of the set that it's in.
I agree. Do
you see where I'm going with this?
But the thing is a new player, they read channel. They're introduced to Kamigawa, and they have a lot of cards that deal with channel. So once they learn what the channel mechanic does and how it works, you pay the thing, you discard the card, you do the thing. Now they can jump through those hoops without needing a ton of extra information. Whereas when they pick up or they draw their hand and they're like, okay, this one says channel, let me see what that does. This one has plane cycle, let me see what this does, and have to reread the rules over and over again. I feel like simplifying it in this way actually really is very helpful for new players.
I also think that it's different for a reminder text ability like landfall or cycling, where it's just landfall and dash sentence
ability. Right.
Channel and dash sentence. Shout out to the end dash. As opposed to, multi-kicker or something else along those lines. Battalion could still be battalion and dash when you attack with 3 or more creatures. Right. But I understand that the complexity is still there, where you're like, there's too many keywords. And if you just take away the keyword and just have the rules text, that's a lot more simple. But then why do we even have it to begin with?
Well, I agree that Radian notes that there's cycling as a keyword and landfall is an ability word. So keywords and ability words are different, which I totally understand. Mm-hmm. I just feel like, again, the whole, like, it's going to be too complex. Ooh, like no one cares. I feel like they cared for way too long about a whole bunch of weird little things, like putting alternate versions of cards out there with alternate arts. And finally they're just like, what if we just did that? And it was super successful.
Cosmetics is so different. That's a terrible comparison.
I'm trying to note something that was doesn't a stalwart at Wizards, and they finally got rid of it. That's all I'm saying. That's what that means.
One, like, it has nothing to do with the actual, like, gameplay itself.
Does it? Because one of the reasons, no joke, one of the reasons they said they got rid of alternate arts was so that they'd make it easier to recognize the game pieces that were on the table. Like, that was their original OG reason for getting rid of them back in the day, was that it made it harder to play the game because you couldn't immediately figure out what that card was across the table because you couldn't remember both of the arts or whatever. Like,
I think ultimately,
just for argument's sake,
I think ultimately it is good to not overload. It's good to not overload text boxes with stuff it doesn't need. So I'm okay with cycling just being cycling 3 and not having super reminder text on it. As long as
what about the D&D set though? Right?
That's the thing though, is like they got to stay consistent. If you do it for D&D, why aren't we doing it everywhere?
Okay, we'll move on here. I think it's a really interesting question, and I appreciate y'all's input.
I think that both arguments are compelling. I think that it is worth having the discussion.
So on the Blogatog, someone had asked Mark Rosewater, will the amount of shard stuff in New Capenna be close to Cons of Tarkir, or will it be closer to Ikoria? Now, Ikoria didn't have a ton of tricolor stuff and a ton of tricolor cycles, whereas Cons Tarkir had a whole bunch of them. So the fact that it's going to be closer to Cons is going to have, I want to say there was like 28 or 29 tricolor cards in Cons. There was something like 12 to 14 in Ikoria. So like, I want all the cycles, like give me all the cycles. Let's do it. I'm ready to see all the ascendancies and stuff. Like, it's going to be great.
No, do not put cycling as an archetype back in a format in limited.
No, cycles,
please.
Not cycling.
Oh,
no, cycles.
I heard cycling.
We were just talking about cycling. So it was, yeah.
I could have swore I heard cycling and you were talking about Ikoria, and I was like, what?
That's a good point. You're not wrong. I think that we want more ponyback brigades and avalanche tusker cycle of like
3-color signpost
morph thing, and also the ascendancy cycle. Let's see, what else was there? 3 colors.
Was Ikoria a bad draft format?
It wasn't a very fun draft format.
It was a very powerful format.
It was very powerful.
Like, it was close. It was one of the most powerful we had drafted in years at the time. I remember that specifically.
Is it bad? I would say it was not balanced. So
it was not.
Given that, yes, I would say.
Of the past however many years, I think it's like the second most unbalanced. I would probably say Midnight Hunt was the most.
I was going to say Midnight Hunt is just a hot mess.
Cycling was too good. And
cycling and humans were both too good. And what was the Evolve? or whatever the
Crimson Vow was also
Mutate?
unbalanced because of the blood token.
Mutate was like unplayable in draft when compared to cycling and humans. So
yeah, it was weird.
That was unfortunate.
But Mark Rosewater does note here that the designs, the set has some of the best top-down card-by-card design ever done. The factions are all top-notch, both mechanically and creatively. And of course, as we know, the art is out of this world gorgeous, as we have already seen.
Top-down is the way to design cards. It's so much fun.
It is so much fun.
It's hilarious. Of like, hey, get it? This is Gordon Gekko, right? Like, this is the Wolf of Wall Street with creature type wolf, right? Like, this is what we're getting in new Capenna. It's going to be hilarious.
Please, a unicorn head in a bed. I need this. I need my Godfather references. Let's go. We're going to move on here to Desperate Ravings and check out our altar sleeves. Bring this up here on the screen here. Support the show by using the code MAGICMICS at checkout for 5% off anything in the store, including a set of exclusive sleeves featuring the Magic Mike's crew at altersleeves.com/MagicMikes. I can talk eventually. Moving on here. Now, the issue that we hinted at earlier was the arena bug. There's a current bug that affects certain targeting or spells that target multiple things like Shatter Skull Smashing and Magma Opus. And if they have multiple targets for divided damage, and if any of those targets become illegal, the damage will incorrectly fail to deal damage to its targets. And it's just sort of this whole weird wave of like, let's all laugh at wizards. And there's this weird bug thing that's going to affect the event. And for me, it makes me that much more sad that like, I would just wish we had the new cards from Alchemy, because I would be a hell of a lot more interested to watch this weekend if it wasn't the same format we've seen grounded down to a nub for the past 3 or 4 weeks.
I mean, that's a different issue than the bug, but
it's a little, well, it relates to that. You know, they have these events when they do, in the idea that the client will be as stable and as, you know, the cards will be as in good a shape as possible. And for me, I'm like, why are you so afraid of just throwing a little bit of caution to the wind? There may be a bug here and there, but my God, it would be so much more exciting. And like, it feels weird to not choose the exciting option at this point.
I mean, that feels a little two-sided for the argument, because anytime they do anything, when they do throw caution to the wind, whether that be set design or trying esports or trying anything else, we certainly have no problem ripping them to shreds for making such decisions. So like the second something crashes and a pro that we like loses a game because of a bug, they're going to take infinite amounts of heat for it. So I disagree. I think that like yes, it would be more exciting, but I can understand that their caution. And if that's not a risk they're willing to take, then I think that's their decision and I support it.
Yeah. There's 2 things. I mean, you went into the argument of something that is, you know, a sort of secondary portion here. The first thing is, it sucks when bugs happen. Yeah. It sucks when there's big events that have bugs and they can't do anything about it. Like, I don't know.
I mean, I'm not pro bug or anything. I don't want bad things to happen.
No, of course. And I don't know if there's just not a good solution apparently around this, because people are going to play Magma Opus. People are going to play multiple target spells.
Right.
And that's just going to be part of the event. So there's no good solution unless they can, you know, burn the midnight oil and fix it, which they're not going to do.
Right.
And I'm not asking them to do that. I'm just saying that they're not going to do that. As it pertains to exciting, interesting new formats, I'm also like the guy, like lots of people are like this, but I like turning in deck lists the day of the event. Like I like surprising people. I like the last minute sideboard change and hidden information. And I think that's a big part of Magic that we've lost, and needing to send in a deck list 10 weeks ahead of time, it takes away some of the excitement for me personally. Maybe that's just the strategist in me, but I mean, I think that's, you know, silly.
It's weird that there were certain things, there were certain norms that were so accepted during the Pro Tour era, as it were, in that the deck lists were turned in the morning of the Pro Tour. Like the coverage team busted their butt to get all of the decks into a database, to get all of that stuff crunched, to have something for the sideboard, slash the extra content to talk about, for the commentators to riff on, for the, for the people to bring in deck text and to get all the cards up there right at the right time. Like all that stuff was like super stressful, took a ton of time and effort, but it was cool because of what sort of it afforded you, which was that excitement of, oh, who's going to submit what? And, oh, the Japanese are playing something crazy and unique and no one's ever heard of it. What are they actually playing? And all those different sort of questions came up. And, I understand that there is if you get the deck lists 5 days ahead of time, you can do all that work ahead of time and you can certainly prep for a lot of cool things, but you do lose some of that excitement. And so when you lose that excitement and then you lose the excitement of a new format that is kind of unexplored, Pro Tours used to happen like 2 weeks after the set releases back in the day. And now they kind of happen just kind of whenever, I guess, about a month or so ish after release almost. But either way, the idea that you can pump in excitement to the event, I'm always pro excitement. I'm the enthusiasm enthusiast. Right. So like, if it's going to get me more pumped for the event, I'm going to be for it. And you're going to say, well, there might be a boogeyman, and how I feel about boogeymen. I don't like them because you got to show me a problem before it becomes a problem, and then we'll deal with the problem if it becomes a problem. Yeah,
I don't know how they figured out this bug and didn't see it. Like, where did this bug come from? Did some update
reported
happen?
It was reported a couple weeks ago in February. I think it was February 22nd was the first time I saw it. Someone noticed it and mentioned it. And Again, I recognize that Arena has dozens of bugs about a bunch of random weird little things, and it may not be on top of their list, but I did see a tweet that somebody mentioned it weeks ago. And that just kind of is what it is. One last thing.
Magic's a complicated game. A computer is not going to be able to do it all.
Yeah, and in some ways, because I've dealt with software development, like I also want to give props to the programmers and the QA people for the, thousands of interactions that work just fine, that work A-okay. You did a good job. Those work great. A few things are buggy. That's okay. I want to move on here to going infinite rather. There's something really interesting on that blog talk. Someone said, hypothetically speaking, could you use the Godzilla technology with cards that don't involve outside IPs? Now, the Godzilla technology is you have Godzilla, but right underneath the title of the card, you have sort of like the magic version title of the card. For example, if you wanted to print the Shard Triomes in a future hypothetical return to Alara, but did not want to let any deck run 8 copies of a given Triome, could you then give the card a new name, but use the Godzilla technology to make it clear it's the same card as the SNC Triome? And Rosewater said it is possible. And I think that's a cool thing.
It's a spectacular idea.
Yeah.
I think that's the best possible way to reprint stuff, and could be an end around the reserved list. But I will leave that there. We don't need to go into that conversation. I'm just saying it's an end around.
That's a big stretch. I like the middle ground of this situation where they print the normal version, but make a fancy alternate version available in the pack that has a different name that uses that fancy text. But not making it a new standard that is the same card with a different name, with the text being the uniform idea. So that way people can, use the other cards freely. I feel like if you name it a different thing, it could be kind of weird where in standard you can't play the old one, but you can play the new. Like I know the rules would get around that, but like it just seems a little iffy. I like the idea of having alters that spice up the lands.
Well, I also feel like, this comes from the old joke that is now, oh my God, almost 20 years old, that the Ravnica Shocklands were named in such a way that you can put them in any set you wanted to, but they only show up in Ravnica sets. Isn't that weird? Right. We don't and you can see it here for Streets of New Capenna. They could have named them Triomes if they really had to, but I think they just went all in after the leader of the family's name and headquarters or whatever. Just look, we can do this differently later on with the Godzilla technology. Let's just go and make them as flavorful as possible.
I think that makes sense. I love that.
Yeah, I dig that too. All right, let's go ahead and turn the corner here to the finisher. DGen Gaming debuted their newest show, DGens and Dragons, starring my two Magic Mike's co-hosts. And with Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate on the upcoming horizon, I'm in a Dungeons and/or Dragons state of mind. So tell me, if you were a D&D character, who would you be, Ruben?
Well, charisma is my spell casting stat, and I'm definitely a bit of a random action generator. So I would be a wild magic sorcerer, and I think I'd probably be a goblin for obvious reasons.
Nerd girl?
I like the voice. Well, as a woman on the internet and a fighter, but as a content creator and magic streamer, I'm a wizard. So I think I would be an eldritch knight. And I think I'd be a variant human. So because of how unique I am and my lack of dark vision. I have no vision.
It's a vision joke.
It's an eye surgery joke.
Eye surgery jokes are my favorite kind of jokes. Now, I'm a storyteller first and foremost, so I'd say I'm a lore bard. But I also love jokes. So instead of an orc or elf or human, I definitely would ask my DM if they'd let me play as a troll. Thanks, Ruben.
Yeah, you're welcome, buddy.
And thank you so much to Jay Blocksby as well as HDMZ. Lots of letters for subscribing to the channel. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And that ends the live episode of Magic Mics. Thanks for joining us here to discuss all things magic. Thank you, Nerd Girl.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Ruben.
Hey, thank you. See you next time.
That's right. We'll move on here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsors, CardHoarder.com and Alter Sleeves, using the code MagicMics on AlterSleeves.com. My co-host, Nerd Girl and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMics. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online on our Discord, twitch.tv at MagicMics, our Twitter at MagicMicsCast, our Magic Mics subreddit, and like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.